Sportscasters and different media publications are facing criticism for the way they have covered female athletes that have competed in the Olympics and won some pretty notable medals. So the first instance is a Hungarian swimmer by the name of Katinka Hosszu. And apparently she just broke a record that's extremely difficult. It's her win for the 400-meter individual medley. She set a new world record on Saturday. So, after that happened, of course, the media starts talking about it. And when the Hungarian swimmer spoke to NBC's Dan Hicks, he remarked that her husband is the guy responsible for her success, and it's impossible to tell her story without giving him credit. Now, I should note that her husband is her coach. And so he decided to give him the responsibility of her win, but people were not too happy about that commentary. Now, that wasn't scripted. He kind of said that off the cuff. But people were not amused. So I'll give you examples of some backlash he faced as a result of that. One person said, I get that Tusip, which is the name of her husband, is the coach, but you can make the connection without using the word responsible. You can't throw that word around. Another person says, Dan Hicks from NBC thinks women aren't responsible for their own gold medals, credits her husband, #everyday sexism. Another woman says, anyone else uncomfortable with the amount of time Dan Hicks spent congratulating her husband for her amazing accomplishment. So Dan Hicks did not apologize, but he did release a statement about this. He says, with live TV, there are often times you look back and wish you had said things differently. Okay, there were other instances and accusations about sexism that we'll get to in a second, but I don't know if this makes me a bad feminist, but I feel a little bit of empathy for him because when you're
bad feminist.
Look, when you're speaking off the cuff, right? When you're speaking off the cuff, sometimes you use the wrong words.
Me, never.
No, it happens all the time, and so it happens to me, and I feel really weird, pointing to him and telling him, you shouldn't have used the word responsible. Sometimes weird things come out in weird ways. Yeah. So I kind of want to give him the benefit of the doubt.
So, look, mixed feelings about the story. On the one hand, yes, I bet if you did a statistical analysis, which, yes, we have not done, that sometimes, overall, women might not get as much credit as men do in some of these medals, et cetera, because of just simply perspectives. One, what our culture is used to, society is used to, a lot of the broadcasters are still males, look at it from a male perspective, yada, yada. Okay. Now, having said that, in this case, well, I mean, her husband's her coach. Of course they're going to remark upon that. And if it was the roles were reversed and it was a male swimmer who had this tough female coach who happened to be his wife, I guarantee you that they would have mentioned the wife and given her some degree of responsibility for it. Yeah. And then one of the tweets that you read, Rachel Clemens said about Dan Hicks, thinks women aren't responsible for their own gold medals, credits husbands. No, but that makes it sound like whenever anybody wins a medal, Dan Hicks is like, nope, it was their husband. It was their husband. No, in this case, it was one time, and it was about a husband who is her coach. Yeah. And apparently, you read more into it, and to me, it sounds disturbing.
Yeah, I don't know if I could handle a relationship like that. But
yeah, apparently, for the people who don't know, he would harangue her. The husband would harangue her in the pool very loudly, and it would make everybody else uncomfortable. They claim that they have a warm and fuzzy relationship outside of the pool, but he was a quote-unquote very tough coach.
Right.
So it was something that everybody remarked upon.
Yeah.
So when she wins the gold medal, of course you're going to talk about that coach.
Yeah.
So I think that, especially in the case of Dan Hicks, this is a little too much.
Yeah, but look, I want to give Dan Hicks the benefit of the doubt just because, again, I know what it's like to make a comment and it comes across in a way that you did not intend. And again, I think that that's what happened here. Benefit of the doubt. Now, there are other instances, though, where I don't think that I can have much empathy. So I'll give you the example there. So the Chicago Tribune came under fire because of the way they had written their headline about Corey Cugdell Uygur. She had a bronze medal winning performance in women's trap shooting. She's been in the Olympics 3 times. Both times she won, 2 times she won a medal. And apparently the Chicago Tribune had written an article about her, and the tweet said the following: wife of Bears lineman wins a bronze medal today in Rio. They didn't even mention her name in the tweet. And then you click on the story that's linked in the tweet, and the headline doesn't even mention her name, right? And so, look, her being the wife of a Bears lineman is completely irrelevant to the story. In the Hicks story, well, you know, the swimmer is married to her coach. And so I could see why he would bring that up. But in this case, who cares if there's a Bears lineman involved?
Again, I can see that there's a male perspective written by a lot, because most of the sports reporters are male. At the same time, I could even defend that. You know why? Because the guy's trying to connect it to something relevant to actual sports fans. So for an American sports fan, a Bears lineman is relevant. The rest of the Olympics are not. So he's like, oh, look, wait, this one's interesting. She's actually related to an athlete you give a damn about. So
that's so, I mean, I don't know. I get it. You want more clicks, but it still takes away from what she achieved. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
and the other reason why I say that it's not just a male-female thing is because, coincidentally, over the weekend, I was reading up about a really successful Silicon Valley entrepreneur who died all of a sudden after he'd gone surfing. And he's beloved, and so I wanted to know, Jesus, why did he die? And just to find out more background on him, right? And every single story was, and his brother is a coach on some Olympic team, and he's leaving Rio, and blah 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 about the brother. I'm like, it's not about the brother. The guy died, and he was like a really interesting guy that I wanted to find more about. Nope, I'm going to talk about the Olympics. I'm going to talk about the Olympics. See, they're both males. But it was like, no, I'm going to try to make this story more interesting by tying it somehow back into this Olympics that no one actually gives a damn about. Do you see what I'm saying?
No. Like, yes, I see what you're saying about that. I don't really see the connection here, though. Like, I feel like if people are interested in a story, a written story about the Olympics, they're going to click on it, right? If they're not interested, mentioning a Bears lineman as the husband in the headline, I don't think is going to do that much to get people or convince people to click on that link. If anything, they've gotten criticism for the way that they've written it, and just name her, at least name her in the headline, right? It's like, oh, woman wins a gold medal. Anyway, Bears lineman, you know, that's her husband. It's just, she's not defined by who her husband is.
Yeah, I know, but I'm serious. Like, they do that all the time. So, for example, for a very long period of time, I never got my name in a headline. What I would get is former MSNBC host. Because they're trying to get you to click on the damn thing. So they're like, you don't know who Cenk Uygur is, but he's a former MSNBC host. Click on this, right? So in this case, if they put her name in, no one would click. They don't know who she is. So look, that's why I say it's probably a combination of factors, and it's hard for me to sit here as another male broadcaster and tell you, ignore this thing that women are bringing up. The male broadcasters have it completely right. But at the same time, there are extenuating circumstances here as to why they've written the things in the way that they have.